Welcome into the Crypto Bunker podcast. Today, I just want to talk about Ethereum and just a few things regarding the macro picture and what we're dealing with in the world today. So everyone knows that after the Trump tariffs, rates spiked, so bonds, fell, the dollar fell, and stocks fell. And so, people are talking about how rare this is and everything. Um, So everyone's kind of searching right now for what is the next Bretton Woods, right? What is the next monetary standard that we're going to move into? Obviously, we've gone to a gold standard, we've gone off the gold standard, we've done QE, we've where the Fed is like buying bonds and the Fed is buying the short end um, treasuries and everything like that. And we've done QT, we've done rates and all this rate cutting. And, it does seem that that is sort of close to coming to an end. I don't know if it is at the end, but, usually every 50 years or so, or 40 or 50 years, there is a reset of a new standard. So I think a lot of the noise that's coming out about like, deals with India and all these things, like that is separate from what is really going on and kind of where the next where the puck is flowing to next, right? Not necessarily where we are now, because the negotiations, that's like old world stuff, right? That's like manufacturing, all that type of stuff. And at the end of the day, like I don't really think manufacturing is coming back to the US. I think it's kind of all of a show, basically. And, maybe Trump is trying to reset the system so that he can move us into a new era. Um, Now, we have a Trump project that is being built, and it's called World Liberty Financial. So we have Liberation Day. We have a project that's called World Liberty Financial. Um, And so we know that this project is an Ethereum-based project. They hold a lot of ETH. They hold a lot of Chainlink, Aave, just to name a few tokens that they do hold. Uniswap, I think. So they're trying to integrate themselves into the Ethereum DeFi ecosystem. They are also using like Binance Smart Chain, and I think that there's been some backdoor deals with like Tron, who is holding a bunch of uh this coin, World Liberty Financial. So I don't really like that as like a scammy kind of thing. Justin Sun, I think, is a scammer. I think he's a con artist, just like sort of just like Trump, honestly. So I don't really trust them to choose the right blockchain, which I think is Ethereum. I think it's, Ethereum L2s. Now, or Ethereum, building your own L2, or just using the ETH L1 for bigger assets, real world assets, things like that. But I think it's annoying a little bit because people are not recognizing this, right, in the market. People are not recognizing Ethereum for its potential of being the next place where all of this financial um, the world sort of moving into a new financial standard. Why wouldn't it happen on Ethereum? A lot of people are talking about a gold standard, but that would move us backwards, right? Like gold is it's not going to work. Okay. It's BRICS is trying to, have some kind of gold back thing, but they're using blockchain as well. And I have a feeling that, whatever happens, um, it probably will be built on a blockchain. And we have now, Circle coming public with USDC. We have, Tether making deals with Cantor Fitzgerald to sort of like give them some of their like Bitcoin, and they're gonna, buy some USDT, like some weird deal that they were doing with them. So there's like backdoor things happening with stable coins, and I think we're gonna get a stablecoin bill passed so that banks like JP Morgan and things can actually make their own stable coins. And so I think this will start probably behind the scenes. Maybe JP Morgan's, top clients will be able to try this new stable coin that's going to give them, 4% yield or something like that, right? And maybe, JP Morgan will have, maybe a couple $100 million or maybe $1 billion of this stable coin that's on Ethereum. Maybe eventually it will be integrated into Aave. I don't know if that stuff will happen necessarily. And it's honestly, it's still such early days that I think that we can really look to like 2030 and beyond to this stuff actually happening. I think this is the beginning. It's like the first shot of the new financial system being planned out and sort of could be happening. But I think we'll have to go through probably a traditional recession, a traditional, stock market correction. I don't think that that's done at this point. I do think it will go lower, and I think that crypto will probably follow suit and also go lower. A lot of Bitcoiners out there are talking about this, and they're saying that Bitcoin is going to be part of the new financial system. I think that Bitcoin will act as a store of value in the new digital ecosystem and financial system that we're building, because with stablecoins increasing, that only gives more liquidity to people who buy Bitcoin with stablecoins. So it's obvious that Bitcoin will be the digital store of value of the new financial system, just like gold is the store of value of the old financial system. And we have to also realize that, the system in some ways is rigged. A lot of these big players do not want gold, at least, to be backing the financial system. They don't want silver to do well. They don't want gold to do well. They've always held them down with leverage and paper derivatives and things like that. The big banks basically have this massive short that they just kind of pass around from bank to bank on silver. And they've allowed gold to run here because I think they have a lot of gold, right? The central banks are the quote unquote like rulers of the financial system and world, because they're owned by the big banks, and the big banks are owned by the big families that have run those for a while. So essentially, that's kind of the top of the pyramid type conspiracy thing, if you want that, or if that's your type of thing. But we have to live in reality. We have to live in what's happening next, what actually is happening in the world. And I do think that Ethereum is the most decentralized, neutral platform that is an obvious step to go to for these big institutions. Some people will say they're going to make their own chains. That's also true, but wouldn't you want your chain to connect to Ethereum as the biggest basically stablecoin provider or stablecoin hub, if you will? Wouldn't you want that to be connected into that liquidity of the Ethereum ecosystem? So the Ethereum ecosystem has the most value locked in DeFi. It's very obvious that Ethereum will benefit from stablecoin creation. It'll sort of be like a quantitative easing that usually ETH will benefit from. And I think the reason that ETH benefits from QE is because it's creating more dollars in the banking system, and the banking system is connected to the stablecoin system, which then in turn is connected to the Ethereum DeFi ecosystem. So it makes sense that quantitative easing goes through into the Ethereum ecosystem more than it does any other project. And that's why I think Ethereum has struggled so mightily, is because quantitative tightening has taken money out of the system for so many years, and we've had all these high rates for so many years now, that Ethereum is kind of like the purest play for QE versus QT. And I think at this point, QE is like so it's thought of so badly, right? It's because of what happened during COVID. Everyone just says, oh, the Fed's going to print money and we're going to get inflation. And psychologically, they can't allow that, because the Fed, more than anything, is a psychological operation. It's not necessarily that they're actually printing money. um, it's a very complicated process. But at the end of the day, they are providing liquidity to banks who can then create money in turn. So you could say that it helps create money, but it's not directly creating money. It's more of a psychological influencer of the market, if you will. So I do think the Fed will have to cut rates this year. That probably will be good for Ethereum, because all the people holding stable coins in Ethereum are getting like 4 or 5% on their stable coin. Once that comes down to 3%, they're more likely to then purchase Ethereum because Ethereum staking rate is at like 2.8%. Um, so, especially if we get that 2-year rate under 2.8%, you're going to see Ethereum start to really push itself upward in this price action. So that's kind of how I see Ethereum. I'm not like an Ethereum trader necessarily, um, but not because I don't want to be. I want to hold Ethereum, long term, not really have to worry about the price action. So for me, ETH is undervalued until it's, much, much higher than what it is now. I see it going to, probably 50,000 or above eventually. I know that sounds crazy. Obviously, that's, 40x from here, something like that. Um, but it's not even, that wouldn't even be a $10 trillion asset. So if we have the entire financial ecosystem, not the entire, but let's just say we get, maybe 20% of the financial ecosystem happening, in some sense on a blockchain. And it could be Ethereum, could be an L2 on Ethereum, whatever it is. Essentially, all of that activity is going to create demand for people holding ETH because ETH secures all of that value. The actual ETH asset that is being staked through the staking mechanism is actually securing all of that wealth that is going to be coming in. This is an argument that not a lot of people will make for Ethereum. They'll talk about how ETH isn't actually getting the value of the flows of those assets, in terms of the actual ETH, the collateral as an asset. It is getting a little bit of burn, right? And that's kind of what they're saying is that we're not getting enough burn. ETH is inflationary slightly, things like that. So, there are people saying that, which is understandable because, we were so used to ETH being deflationary when things were good and when things were flying high. So it's, I get it. You can obviously look at ultrasound.money if you have not done that before. ETH right now essentially is, over the course of since the burn started, ETH has gone up 0.8% per year in the inflation of the asset. So it's up slightly since the merge. And, the supply is still at, 120 million 718,162 ETH. And, the Bitcoin supply goes up 1.5% per year. So what we can see is, and I'll just share my screen actually, just so you guys, if you can see this. But yeah, I mean, basically, we have, we can look at all the money that is secured also by ETH in this instance. So you can see that if we put it on a time frame, let's say, let's keep going here on the time frames. So yeah, it goes from 7 days time frame to 30 days and then 2 years. So this is since the merge. We've had almost 2 million ETH burned and then 2 million 2.1 million ETH issued. So that gives us that. I mean, really, actually, since the merge, it's only plus 0.06%. So that's really interesting. I mean, I think that's barely anything, really. So, but we can also put we can look at there's a supply projection here. There's all those different types of things. You can see the burn, like the biggest burners. Uniswap is definitely always one of the biggest for the burn. The flippening, yeah. So total value secure. This is kind of what I wanted to get to. So right now the security ratio is at 8 times, which is really not very, very big. If you're securing, you're securing all this value, which you can see here, and which is essentially $500 billion, right? That's what ETH is securing right now. And so you do have this, and I think in the future, I mean, you can see the stable coins. There's 72 billion of Tether. There's 40 billion of USDC, and then Lido Stake Ether is the next ERC20 at 16 billion. Obviously, there's 219 billion of ETH that's being secured. So we understand that. And there's actually 12 billion of Bitcoin, which is being, stored here, which is really like 0.07% of the supply, maybe something like that. I could be wrong, but I think that's just about what it is. So, and then you can look down here at monetary premium. So, you can see, if you imply that an ETH price is at gold, then you're looking at an $18,000, and you put a Tesla, or you put a Tesla premium on it. Okay, so so ETH right now is sitting, it looks like at 118 price to earnings ratio, which to me, as an asset that is like the blockchain for the entire financial ecosystem, the actual asset has buybacks through the burn. You can earn a yield on it, and it's securing the entire like transactions that go through there and all the assets on it. So why wouldn't it be? I mean, okay, it's not going to probably be a higher monetary premium than gold. So let's just be honest. But yeah, we'll leave the premium, the growth profile the same, because I think that's fine. And what we could see is 18,000. Now, obviously, this puts us at 30,000, which would be a 16x. I'm not going to do that. So look, I mean, this is just an example that I wanted to show of this. But in general, I think we just have to be aware that the new financial system is coming, and that, I think Ethereum could be a big part of that. So I just wanted to highlight that for you guys today. I hope that it makes sense. I also think that like treasuries, with everyone saying there's less demand for treasuries, why not put those on the blockchain? You'll get more demand for them just by like being innovative, right? You can do different things with the blockchain. Like the treasuries could be backed by oil, gold, copper, silver, Bitcoin, ETH, and dollars, or whatever else. And you could actually put like maybe this sort of flavor of things, and it could just be gold. So let's just say it's gold. You could put that on the blockchain. You could verify that the gold is there on the blockchain. You can do all types of things with the blockchain. So I think that, and then we can see that on chain, like what is it backed by? We can actually see it. And so I'm very bullish Ethereum long term. And I think that people are definitely afraid, and they think that, risk off is going to be bad for the price, and, everything. And this is going to be terrible. And like, if you're just looking at the ETH price, then yes. But if you're thinking about the possibilities of what this could be, and you're thinking about the fundamentals that continue to get better through the developers and the people who are working on Ethereum and trusting in their process, then you understand that this is the largest DeFi ecosystem. This is the largest stablecoin ecosystem. This does have the biggest institutions like BlackRock building on top of it with their treasury, treasuries being on the blockchain. We have Larry Fink talking about real world assets. We know that's going to happen on Ethereum. I will also give a quick shout out to Chainlink because I think that Chainlink is going to obviously it's in everything, right? It's in all of it. I mean, I'm sure even ultrasound.money probably uses Chainlink to verify the amounts of all these different things that they keep track of. So, I'm also bullish Chainlink because I think even if like these companies make their own chains and somehow Ethereum, doesn't work out, they're going to have to still use Chainlink. There's really nothing else that's been proven over a longer period of time. So they actually have to use Chainlink. There's really no other option. So I don't know how that value accrues to the actual token of Chainlink, but I will say that I'm also bullish on Chainlink. So yeah, hopefully that helped you guys out or just kind of helped you to think about Ethereum in a different way. So that we can, hodl, because I think that we are going into tumultuous times. It is going to look potentially, it'll look like the end of the world and, sell everything, buy gold, buy silver, like that type of stuff is going to happen over the next couple of years. But you just have to discipline your mind and understand where the new system is going in the future. It's not going backwards in time. There might be gold-backed treasuries, things like that, but we're not going to go back to a gold standard unless it's somehow incorporated into the blockchain itself. So I think the answer is there for people willing to look for it. I hope that the government, I don't trust the government really, but hopefully they, do the right thing and pick the most decentralized chain so that we're not, putting the whole financial system on something like Solana that would like break or be down for, days at a time or whatever, whatever's going on with Solana. I don't really trust them as much as I trust Ethereum as an ecosystem and as a blockchain. So I don't really think there's any other option. I don't think Bitcoin is, and it's funny because these people like Jordy Visser and Michael Saylor, they talk about Bitcoin as if it's Ethereum. It's kind of funny. Like they talk about Bitcoin as if it's like where the AI agents are going to go buy their money, and like somehow that doesn't make any sense though, because Bitcoin is kind of like a totally separate entity, right? Like we know it's secure and we know that we can guarantee everything on Bitcoin. We can trust what Bitcoin is doing itself. But the people around Bitcoin, they want it to be everything. They want it to be Ethereum. So they talk about how the whole Bitcoin is like the new internet. That makes no sense. Bitcoin's not the new internet. Ethereum is the new internet. We need to start saying these types of things because, I think we are, but they're not being called out enough for the BS. They talk about, Mark Andreessen wrote this article, but it was in like 2014 that he said Bitcoin's the new internet. He's already invested in Optimism and these L2s and Ethereum and all these things and Uniswap and all these DeFi things. They understand that that's where the new internet is. They're investors. They put their money where their mouth is and mouth where their money is, right? So we have to understand that yes, Bitcoin can be a digital store of value and it can be separate from the system and it can fill that role. But it's annoying that I think it's just so early, honestly, that we just have to take the punches as they come and just kind of understand we have to just hold long term and just trust that people will continue to build no matter what the price is of Ethereum. So I hope this helped. And if it did, please like, subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.